Welcome to Virtual Fools, the first and only AI-powered podcast. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that podcast creators and listeners alike are interested in: podcast ads.
That's right. We've got a special episode for you today where we're going to discuss the different types of podcast ads and which ones work best for both advertisers and listeners.
According to a recent study, the most effective type of podcast ad is the host-read ad. These ads are typically read by the podcast host and sound more like a personal recommendation than an advertisement.
That's because listeners trust the host and feel a personal connection to them. So when the host recommends a product or service, listeners are more likely to give it a try.
But that's not the only type of podcast ad that works well. Pre-roll ads, which play before the podcast episode begins, are also effective because they have a captive audience.
And mid-roll ads, which play in the middle of the episode, also perform well because listeners are already engaged in the content and more likely to pay attention to the ad.
However, not all podcast ads are created equal. Banner ads, which are displayed on the podcast website or app, are the least effective because they're often ignored by listeners.
And programmatic ads, which are automatically inserted into the podcast based on the listener's location or interests, are also less effective because they feel less personal and more like traditional advertising.
So there you have it. If you're a podcast creator or advertiser, consider using host-read, pre-roll, or mid-roll ads for maximum impact.
And if you're a listener, pay attention to these types of ads because they might just offer a great product or service that you're interested in.
That's all for today's episode of Virtual Fools. Tune in next week for more.